To add in the additional functionality into our webcam photo booth sticker collage app, one thing that needs to happen is we need to change which version of Fabric that we're using. That was one of the issues when I was trying to add in a delete capability into this so that you'd be able to delete objects as you added them to the Fabric canvas, and the delete was failing, and it turns out it was the version of Fabric. So there's a different Fabric. This is not a minimized version, but it's a different one that I downloaded from the website. So we will need to switch to that. And that version of Fabric will be posted on the GitHub site, so you'll be able to access that. Find the link to that in the description to the video. So I'm going to save that. So that's the first step that I need to do. Now when I wander over into my collage piece, this is where we're going to need to add some additional content. The way that we're going to set it up is to make it so that we can use the keyboard as a way to delete information from it. And to accomplish that, what we need to do is I'm inside my start mixing function because we don't want to be listening for the delete key until we start mixing on our project. So I will now do window, add event listener. The listener I'm looking for is going to be key up. And then I will create a function and I will title this delete object keyboard. And that now creates it. Now, another question that came up is how can we add a background to the main canvas area? And we do that here in start mixing function because this function is called every time we go back to the Fabric canvas. Because if we just set the color initially before we go to the canvas, it doesn't stick when we leave it and come back to it. So if I now say canvas, set background color, now we specify a color to set. And to do that, I am just going to use my color picker. Let me try that again. And with the color picker, I can then choose the color that I am looking for. And I want something a little bit more like this. I think that's going to be a nice color. I'm going to go just a little bit on the pinker side. So now I've chosen my color, so it's RGB, and that now will set the color. So every time we go to the canvas, it will now take on that pink, purple kind of color. The next thing that we need to do is we need to define delete object keyboard, the function. To add this function, we could add it inside, or we can go after start mixing function here, and I will just say function, and this will be delete object keyboard. And with that, what we are going to do is we're going to tell the canvas to remove, and then we will tell it to remove the current active object. So we say canvas get active object. And then after we do that, we need to tell the canvas to update the display of the objects on canvas. So we say request render all. So request render all will have the canvas redraw all of the current active objects that are presently on screen. I'm going to put in my and start mixing. Well, not start mixing function. I was reading the line above that. It's delete object keyboard. And we'll just put some returns in for spaces. So now let's save this and see how it looks. So if I take a picture and now add a bunch of objects in, move them around so we can see there's a bunch of objects on screen. Now if I select those eyeglasses, hit delete on the keyboard, goes away. Hit the orange, delete, picture, delete. So it's showing me that I can now delete the objects from my canvas. So that's nice. And if we're going to do it that way, we should probably put some instructions somewhere on screen while we're in the picture mixing canvas to say, hey, if you want to get rid of something, press the delete key. Now, there's some other things that we could do, such as we can add a little delete icon into the control handles on the object, and that is what we will do next. Adding in the delete object, I'm going to just get rid of this. We're no longer using it where we would stick the kitten picture on. So we have the start mixing function, which adds in the webcam picture, changes which panel we're seeing, the photo camera or the mixing area. And that gets some of our items off to a good start. So now what we need to do is we need to add some additional content into what we are doing. This page that we can find some of the code that we need to work with. So we're going to be adding in a delete icon, which allows us to delete something. Now, this functionality of adding in controls, so we're adding in different kinds of controls. So we're creating control objects and putting them on, which allows us to delete and do other stuff like that. This is what requires us to use the different version of the Fabric library. And we can find that version if we want on this page by going under resources, and we'll see that here is a version of that. And we can see how it's not a minimized version as well. So now going back into the JavaScript here, one of the things that I want to do is to go grab this delete icon, which is going to be an SVG file that is created. So this is where we're creating or drawing that SVG data. So instead of linking to an actual image file, which you could certainly make if you wanted to, you could be linking to a local file that you've made that is your delete icon, or we can use this inline SVG option. So that is what we are going to do in this instance. Now if I go back into my code here, and to add in that, I'm going to do it before I add the webcam picture in. And I'm just making a section in here where I'm going to insert it into my code. And I will say let delete icon be equal to all of that SVG information. Now we're going to create an image. This is the image that we are going to be adding. So we will use the create element, and the element we're creating is an image, and then we will set that image source to be equal to the delete icon that we have added. So again, we could create an element, we could set the source equal to an image file. So if we had a local image file in our images directory, we could be linking to that instead of using the SVG, but this is a good opportunity to learn how we can do some of that additional stuff. Now what we need to do is say fabric object prototype transparent corners. This will turn the corners from being the transparent light blue squares that will become solid color. And then I'm going to also set my corner style or corner color equal to blue. And finally, my corner style is going to be a circle, because it's more fun that way and it looks more like the handles we see in a lot of our other programs. So that now changes the controls. So we can save this and see what's going on inside our project. And now I can see I got the blue and it's solid, but I did not spell style correct. So let's try again. Take picture, click on it. Now we have circles. Yep, so that's better, and I can hit delete, goes away. Excellent. So we're making progress here. It's all baby steps, one step at a time. Now, to add the delete icon, we are going to fabric object prototype controls, delete control. It's going to be new fabric control. And this functionality of adding in a control is something that is part of that different version of the fabric library. The previous one we were using did not support creating a fabric control. So that's why we had to switch which version we were using. And now we have a series of properties that we're setting. So every time we add a fabric object, we have a series of properties that we are setting with it. And I will set my x equal to 0.5 and my y equal to 0.5. And what that does is this is going to work on changing the registration point for the object, put a comma after that curly brace. So position has two values, x and y with it, but then our next values will be our offset x, and we'll set that equal to -16, comma, and then offset y will be set equal to 16. Again, we're doing this so that we will locate the deleted icon up and right. So we're moving it above the object and to the right of the object. So the -16 puts it 16 pixels above the object. The offset y offset y puts it 16 above. Offset x moves it over. So we're changing. Oh, I have my x and y flipped on here. No wonder my brain was not working. X, we push over 16, Y, we go up 16, so it's diagonally up and right of the main object controls. And we'll set our cursor to a pointer, and then our mouse up handler, which we will then call a function. The function we're going to call is delete object, and we will have to then put that function, type it. We haven't created it yet. And then the render for this particular object will be the render, we'll call a method called render icon. And our corner size is going to be equal to 24. Now all of these values were initially snagged by grabbing them from this document here so that we can work with that. It's actually this, so we can see how the delete is up and right of the object. There's a clone icon, there's delete. We're only concerned in this case about the delete icon in our project. So we're making progress on this. We do need to now define out the two options of render icon and delete object, because these are two methods that we will need to incorporate in our project to make the whole thing function. So first we will do our function render icon. Now this method is going to reference the canvas context, and it'll take a left and our top and a style override, and then the thing we're putting on our fabric object. So when we call render icon, we pass that information to the object. Now what that means is we need to say let size equal this dot corner size. Then we tell the context to save. So what this does is it saves our current transformation matrix that has happened. So when we take an object and we rotate it or scale it or do other things, if we want this icon to stay with the object while it's moving, this is what this function is doing. So it saves our current transform information. And now we're going to translate left top, and then we're going to rotate, and we'll use the fabric utility of 2 radians. We'll call the fabric object. So this now gives us access to the rotation of the current object. We'll call the draw image method. We will draw this image. And centering it using half width and height. And then after we've done these transformations, drawn it in its new location, then we call restore, which then resets us back to the default transform for the canvas. So anytime we're doing transformations of translating or rotating or scaling, we need to save our current transform so we can go back to it and then do our changes and then restore that original transformation. Finally, we need to then call our delete object method. And this method is going to take in some event data and capture a target, because the target is going to be related to the object that has this icon attached to it. So we're going to grab a reference to our canvas, or current canvas. So canvas equal to our target canvas, and then we'll just tell our canvas to remove our target, and then we'll tell the canvas once again to request render all. Now when we do this, let's see how it works. Take a picture, put something on, click on the object, and oh, we have typo. Can't find degrees to radians. What? Okay, and clearly it's not, it shouldn't be fabric ulil, it should be fabric util, as in utility. So there's a little typo there. So let's save that and try again. Now click on the object, there's the delete icon. Click the button, goes away. Hey, look, there's another object. Delete. Now, sometimes it comes up with an error message, and I think that is related to the fact that this particular version of the Fabric library has some issues with it. So it does have a few quirks, but for the most part we can generally disregard some of these extra options. If I go back to new photo, start mixing, put the object in, so it works. So it seems that it sometimes does have some weird glitches, but for the most part is behaving, because the errors as they're happening are not in our code. So we're having some things happening inside the actual Fabric code itself. As you're working with this, if it becomes an issue that you're afraid that that error could trip things up over time, what you could do is simply not use the delete icon on it, but instead, as you go through, you add your different objects, click on an object, and just have the instructions. It requires the use of the delete key to make things go away. So that is certainly a possibility as well. Going to the next stage on this, what I want to do is add the ability to take the different collage or sticker elements and move them on top of each other or behind each other. So allow us to move them like layers, and I'm going to add 2 buttons to do that. There would be some other ways that you could do this. You could make a visual representation of every object that you add to it, maybe in the right-hand column, so that you could just physically drag those, or you would have arrows that allow you to click on one and then move it up or down in that layer stack. That would be a way you could do it. Right now we're going to go with the simple solution, which is to add 2 more buttons to the bottom of our frame. So as I go to add these buttons in, I will add in a button. This will have a ID will be equal to my back button, and with this a layer back, and then close out that one, and then for my next one it will be my button ID will be equal to forward button, and this will be layer forward, and close out button. So that saves my HTML. If I go and look at it, start mixing, we'll see it added 2 more buttons. Notice, because they're not referenced properly in the CSS, they're not showing that same styling, but I don't think they should have the same styling. If anything, they should be treated differently, maybe moved over, change the icons on them. Maybe you want to add an arrow on it, so you would have like a left arrow or caret symbol, so you'd have something like this, and then you would have on the right, so you could make graphics, lots and lots of options. It's up to you to decide how to make your project look and behave better. Now that we have those 2 objects, we need to gain a reference to them in the JavaScript, as well as then attach the functions for the behaviors that will be associated with them. Adding it into our code, back button, null, and let our forward button also be equal to null. All right, now continuing what we've done before, back button will be equal to document query selector. The selector is going to be our back button. our forward button will be document query selector, and it will be our forward button. So now we have both of those items selected. Then what we're going to do is tell each of those items to listen. So we can go down here and we'll have our back button, add event listener, the click, and this time it's going to be, we'll call push back, and then forward button, add event listener, click, push forward. Now always, every time you're doing this, do remember after the event we comma, function name, comma, and then false. So it's important that we always remember those commas, otherwise we will get errors that will drive you nuts, and we don't want to go there. Okay, so now that we have that, what we can do is go down. We'll just do it right after here and say function push back, and our pushing it back needs to do a couple of things. We need to grab our canvas and use the command of send backwards. Notice that's plural with an S, not just backward but backwards. And then we are going to specify which object, so I'll choose canvas, get active object. So that gets the object that is currently selected. We used a similar thing on it before when we were deleting it with the keyboard, so we're getting that active object, but we're going to tell Canvas to send back that current active object. And then we'll tell Canvas to discard active object. And what that does is that makes it so that no objects are currently selected or clicked on, so it restores the objects to their correct layer stacking order. And then finally, we need to call request render all to update it. And now I am going to just log out a statement so I know that this is working, and I will send out back. Now our push forward is going to be very similar. And I will just add in my comment on each one. So push back, push forward, change back to forward. Those lines are the same. Now instead of sending it backward, this time we are going to bring forward. So send backwards. There's an S on that. Very important to do that. It's easy to forget and then wonder why it doesn't work. And then bring forward will bring it forward. Now I'm going to save this. And line 57 is unhappy. So let's go find line 57 and see what's going on. What's happening as I look through, so line 57, it says push forward is not defined. Well, when I copy pasted, I changed everything except the name of the function. So now we save it, no error messages, good. Smile, take a picture, let's add a few objects in here, move them around a little bit so we can see what is happening. So now these lips currently are on top of everything. So now if I go layer back, move back, click on the lips again, layer back, that's good. Now if I click on the horns, bring those forward, click on the glasses, layer forward. If I click on the picture, layer forward, click on the picture. So notice every time I click on one of these buttons, it deselects. We lose the handles that are attached to that object, but I can see all of those items are there. Now I can go back one at a time until we start to gain what we are looking for. So it looks like we got a couple glasses, lips, that. Now if I click on the picture and hit delete, that still works. Oh, there's some lips there. We can see they're on top here. Let's push them back. Now they're behind that one. We're in good shape. So this deselecting of it is the same as if I would just click in the background off of any object. But when the picture is completely covering the screen, so if the picture is covering the screen and I have nowhere to click, then and it was active, because that picture was active as I moved it, then when I tried to layer back, we can't see what's there. I can't click around the edge, I can't click off of it. But if I hit layer back, it goes away. So this is part of why I would encourage you, perhaps don't make the picture full screen. Another option is you could make the picture not drop in off center, but have it fully fill the canvas and drop in, and how the picture is how the picture is, and lock it so we can't move the picture. And you could read through the documentation on how you might make an object so it's not selectable. So if you go into the Fabric documentation, you can learn about doing that. So we've now added a couple more pieces of what could be argued as crucial functionality into the project.